Before I begin on this, how many people here have heard of Ed Wood? Good. All right. Well, the few that have disappointed me will learn. So, just kind of the big thing that sets this off is he was labeled as the worst director of all time for movies in the 80s by Michael Medved, a conservative radio host and movie reviewer. So I don't know if you want to listen to him.
I'll give him a shot.
Quick note on the terminology here. Based on the era this takes place, is the 1950s primarily, and they did use the term transvestite instead of cross-dresser back then. I will be using some outdated terms just to kind of let everyone know ahead of time. Hopefully, I'm not beaten for that. So, qualifications on this is iffy because, like, who gets qualified to talk about Ed Wood? But I grew up with a mom who loved science fiction and horror, and she raised us with a lot of this shit. Particularly in the 90s, they started re-releasing movies from the 50s and 40s and 60s from her childhood, as it were. And she was so excited to share a lot of this stuff with us. This one here was her favorite, which was called the Giant Claw, which is a giant space vulture that could fly faster than the speed of sound. And they defeated by using a slow airplane because it was more maneuverable. My younger brother and I laughed our asses off at that film, but we've had a good time. And she kept showing us a lot of these movies, things that she loved, and we just kind of grew along with it. As we were making fun of her movies, years later we discovered Mystery Science Theater 3000. Good. You should know that. That is Minnesota's greatest export. And you might be thinking Prince, but no, it's Mystery Science Theater. It's a TV show, for those who don't know, that watches movies that nobody knows about, and then they rip them. They do jokes on them. This predates a lot of this crap that you see on like YouTube now. That to me, it feels very mean-spirited instead of fun. Mystery Science Theater was fun. It felt like we were watching a bad movie with friends. Other things that we got to experience with our mom was, because she was a huge horror fan and a Stephen King fan, we got to watch Pet Sematary when we were young. We got to watch Christine. This one here with the giant ant is a 1954 film called Them. That is one of my favorites. They built giant practical ants. They look badass. She showed us Night of the Living Dead, and we sat around as a family and watched Deliverance. So, these were good times that we had with my mom kind of influencing this. When we discovered Mystery Science Theater, ripping on these old movies, we were like, oh shit, we're already doing that. So, the QR code is my link tree. It goes to a lot of stuff, but it does have a lot of links specific to this presentation. I will show it at the end. So, Ed Wood, pre-Hollywood, born in Poughkeepsie. His mom always wanted girls, so she dressed him in girl clothes when he was a kid. He's a good, upstanding citizen boy. He was a Boy Scout. He was a Marine. He was in World War II. He, according to my research, shot a lot of people, which I did not know previously. World War II was also where he got hit in the face with the butt of a rifle and lost the teeth in front, so he wore dentures most of his life. And he always loved telling stories. His father bought him a camera very similar to this one, a Kodak City Special, that he absolutely loved when he was a kid. And that was like his first thing of like, I'm going to be doing movies. He would film these things and you'd do them with friends around the neighborhood. And that was a big part of his life, big storyteller. His proudest moment with this camera was filming a Zeppelin flying into New York over the Hudson. Oh, by the way, that was a Hindenburg. That's true. He filmed the Hindenburg before it exploded in its final destination in New York. His wife backs this up. Of course he's going to be excited about it. Who would be excited about that years later? Sad, but you know. So, Christine Jorgensen, and this will play into this. Who has heard of Christine Jorgensen? There was not enough of you. So obviously I'm going to have to come back and talk about her. So she is the first high-profile transgender person in the United States. Like Ed Wood, she was in the military. She was in World War II. However, afterward, she realized, like, there's something different about her. She wanted to extrapolate on that, and she went to Denmark and got revolutionary hormone replacement surgery, or hormone replacement therapy. Sorry, yeah, words. She had surgeries, so she was kind of a big deal. She didn't think this was going to be a big deal until she returned to the United States, and suddenly she was headline news, and she leaned into it. So, with all of her newfound fame, there was of course going to be a movie made about her. This is not the movie, but it was supposed to be. Ed Wood lucked out, and there's some conflicting kind of stories about how the specifics of this went, but he was either filming this ahead of time or he was doing this to be about Christine Jorgensen and her story of her sex change operation. Christine Jorgensen wisely pulled out of this early on with the advice of her parents saying, hey, maybe you don't do that yet. They did make a movie about her in, I think, the late 60s, and that one is just flatly called The Christine Jorgensen Story. It's pretty good. But this, Glenn or Glenda, instead of becoming about Christine Jorgensen, it became Ed Wood's coming out story of him being a transvestite. This film was widely panned, and I literally watched it today while putting on my makeup. It's got some good ideas. He's clearly trying his best to destigmatize transvestism and even transgenderism. And then there's a lot of weird stock footage, and there's scenes of scantily clad women on couches and bondage stuff that, I don't know, was a dream sequence or something? I don't know. I watched it, but this became kind of his story. This didn't win him huge accolades, and it does have a narrator. It very much has a feel of, if you've seen Reefer Madness, it very much feels kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, Ed Wood himself he was a unique individual, obviously, war veteran, transvestite, filmmaker. He gathered a lot of unique individuals and people around him. This term here, the Wood Spooks, was coined by Mila Nurmi, otherwise known as Vampira. She predates Elvira by a good 30 years, and actually unsuccessfully sued Elvira for trying to steal her shit. But he was a close friend of Bela Lugosi in his final years. He introduced the world to Tor Johnson, who was a pro wrestler turned big guy for movies. The guy down here, Bunny Breckenridge, he was, in real life, attempting to do the same thing Christine Jorgensen had done. But he was going to Mexico, and it didn't go well. What I love about the people that Ed Wood pulled into his life and kind of brought with him is, if you look at this and you don't know the names, you're like, oh, that's just your average queer friend group. You got your brooding guy, you got your big one, you got the high femme person, you got the guy that sleeps in a coffin. Like, this is average queer friend group. But kind of the big thing to kind of note here was that he was a very open and accepting person. He was not very judgmental. And he was accepting of all of these unique personalities, these strange people. Tor Johnson was not a trained actor. Vampira kind of lost her television show, and her success was sidelined for being a socialist, apparently. Bela Lugosi was thought dead when Ed Wood kind of brought him into films and was putting him in pictures again. He was on his out. Like, his life was nearing its end. He was dealing with bad addiction problems. But Ed Wood accepted all these people. He loved them. He tried to give them work. He tried to support them. And I think that was one of the big, that's like a big takeaway for him. He was somebody who was very judged, and who would be very judged just by who he was. So he's not going to be that kind of person. He was open and accepting, and that's something that I very much love about him. I think the worst director of all time is not fair to who this person was, and with people like Michael Medved, conservative commentators, it's easy to also dismiss him because of his transvestism. Porno! When Hollywood works kind of started drying up, he ended up working in porn. I think all queer people might be somewhat familiar with this kind of line of, oh, I'm a queer person, I'm not doing well in regular society, I now have to do sex work. This was very early on too. This was early 1970s. This predates Deep Throat, which was the big cinematic porn film in, I don't remember what year it was. I'm not a porn expert, despite what it looks like. The quote here from Quill, I'm learning so much about porn, is directly from one of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 films that was Ed Wood's. So that's from The Sinister Urge. But this is kind of where his life led downward. Porn was considered something you couldn't lose money on, but he wasn't really making money either. He's got some general genre silliness, just kind of taking these titles and the good times that we'll have here. He wrote novels. My amazing partner has actually purchased 2 of them for me. So I think I have Black Lace Drag and another one. He did a lot of stuff that was essentially exploitation films. Very exploitative, very outside normal society. He wrote a shitload of novels about transvestites, in case Diary of a Transvestite Hooker is not clear. I particularly love the title Purple Thighs. I feel like that novel writes itself. One of his friends, John Andrews, referred to him as an idea man. New idea every day. He would work until exhausted, and then he'd move on to the next one. And he did have a ton of ideas. They weren't necessarily always good, and he didn't necessarily always have the money to make them good. But he had the ideas. He wrote dozens of novels, far more novels, I think, than he actually completed films. But I think Ed also has kind of a legacy. Andy Warhol, John Waters, Don Mancini, people probably are not as familiar with, but Blue Movie down there, Andy Warhol's Blue Movie, was the first film shown in American theaters with unsimulated sex. So that was the first film shown in theaters with real porn. And these are things that just, I think this is kind of the queer mantra or the queer element overall, that pushing boundaries, that just outside the edge of society, that we're going to do something other people are afraid of. There's unsimulated elements in Pink Flamingos. Don Mancini is a gay man and the creator of Child's Play and Chucky. And he has a lot of elements of his stuff that do recall, sorry, I pulled the microphone off my face. He has a lot of elements, especially in later movies, or actually the middle Child's Play movies, that recall classic cinema, classic horror cinema, and queer filmmakers of the past, including like John Whale, who made Bride Frankenstein. So his legacy is referred to as the worst director of all time. As I noted, I think that's really unfair. His films are campy. His films are silly. There's unique ideas to them. That clip on the far left there, walk. That's him in his film The Sinister Urge on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Clip from Plan 9 from Outer Space. In 1994, Tim Burton filmed a biopic about Ed Wood. Downside, it does include Johnny Depp, who you may have mixed feelings about, but it also has another person who was like an abuser. But the film is strong. The film works. It skips a lot of things, but I think what it succeeds in is kind of showing his character as this was an open person. This was a creative person. This was a struggling artist who's had great ideas and his visions just struggled to connect. That he was open and accepting. And Martin Landau, playing Bela Lugosi, did win an Academy Award for his presentation in there. In the bottom here, for those not familiar with Child's Play, there's Chucky and Tiffany from the Chucky movies, and between them is their daughter-son. In Seed of Chucky, they gave birth to a child who was non-binary and sometimes felt like a boy and sometimes felt like a girl, and that child went by either Glenn or Glenda. This, of course, Plan 9 from Outer Space is kind of his big hallmark film. That's the one that is most well known. He's got a lot of stuff, and all of his things are bizarre, risque, but campy and enjoyable. There's a quote I recall, I think it's just generalized, of the worst thing a movie can be is boring. And his films are definitely not boring. Even the porn films, which I watched one last weekend by myself, and then reported to my fiance what was happening in it. And it felt like the entire film was a setup for a joke against a homophobe. But watchable, enjoyable, and I'm very happy that I got to see Plan 9 from Outer Space in a theater with riff tracks. So that was outstanding. Riff Tracks, for anyone who doesn't know, is kind of a sequel to Mystery Science Theater 3000. And there's QR code. If you want to watch these, this will bring you to, again, my link tree. It will show a bunch of links where you can watch several of these films. Many of them are with Mystery Science Theater 3000, Riff Tracks, or associated things. Several of his films are public domain now. Glenn and Glenda's public domain. Watched it on Prime. Colorized, no less. So, that is Ed Wood.
So why exactly did you feel so drawn to Ed Wood specifically?
Okay, my partner hates this, but I feel like I have kind of a connection with him because I am also like an artist who just can't get it, can't make it. I've written like 2 novels and they're not published. I don't know what to do. So, things like that. And I feel like the underdog, like we all want to celebrate the underdog, and he's like a huge underdog. He's somebody that definitely deserves a different chance. Like, his movies are not grade A. His movies are not super amazing. I don't think he's the worst director of all time. I've seen Rise of Skywalker. I know how bad a movie can be. So, like, 15 minutes into that movie, I was fucking exhausted, and then I was like, how much? There's a whole movie left. But I don't want to watch that. But a lot of that. Also, fun fact. He died 5 days after I was born. And he was in Los Angeles, California, and I was born in Loma Linda, California. So I was not that far from him.
You're saying you're Ed Wood reincarnated?
Yes. I might be Ed Wood reincarnated. I'm hoping that maybe the 3rd time's the charm and the gender will just be correct.
Other questions?
Hi, I feel like with the number of people in here who did not know who Ed Wood was, maybe you should explain your outfit. Because suddenly... You look amazing!
this to represent Ed Wood as he was. He loved Angora, he had a fetish for it, and he wrote that fetish into a lot of his films and books. So my partner found this sweater, unfortunately not actually Angora, but this is not far off from what he wore in Glamour Glenda and what Johnny Depp wore in the film when he was coming out to his partner in that, who was Dolores Fuller, at the time played by Sarah Jessica Parker. Dolores Fuller, by the way, Ed Wood's first major partner. She went on to a lot of other kind of accolades outside of Hollywood, including songwriting for, of all people, Elvis.
I'm just gonna ask a question that hopefully other people are thinking, otherwise I'm gonna feel real awkward about this. Which porno was it?
Alright, so I volunteered for this, and then literally the next week found this book about Ed Wood in a used bookstore. Very agricultural. Later on, I bought his porno, which is called Hard Wood. And I forgot the name of the one I watched in just a minute here. The Young Married. Ew. I watched The Young Marrieds, which, not the most erotic film. It starts with this very homophobic husband who's cheating on his wife because she's just not good enough for him. And then later she's like, why do you want to fuck me? Am I not as hot as those girls? And he's like, but I like slutty girls. So she decides to be slutty for him. Eventually they keep going, and reaching the climax was that he talked her into going to a swingers party, and so they went to the swingers party. And remind you, again, this dude was super homophobic. He was like, I don't like the dykes, I don't like the fags, the whole time, for some reason. In the end, his wife was making it with another guy's wife, and so that guy's like, hey, turnabout's fair trade. And he goes sit next to that guy, the homophobic guy, and he's like, what, you never sucked a dick before? And then the camera focuses on the homophobic guy. He's just got the face like, And then, like any good porno, it cuts to stock footage with a narrator. Yeah, you're probably supposed to finish before then, but I thought it was amazing in the sense that he mixed so much queer and straight stuff, and he considered himself a straight man, but he did that in a porn film in the early 70s, and I was like, straight people would love this. They flashed the screen with just still images of men having sex and making out.
Other questions? One more question, maybe?
That's about porn.
All right, well, if you have other questions, you can ask Dixie directly afterwards.